It started with something as ordinary as a parent-teacher meeting. I never imagined that a single conversation could shake the ground beneath my feet. But that's exactly what happened the day I met her. Amelia. She wasn't just any parent. She had a quiet grace, a confidence that filled the small classroom, and eyes that seemed to look right through me, reading thoughts I didn't dare to speak. From that moment, something inside me shifted. I've always believed in rules, professional distance, clear boundaries, the invisible lines that keep emotions in check. But when she smiled that first time, something about her presence pulled me in, and suddenly those boundaries began to blur. I told myself it was harmless, that we were simply two adults having polite conversations after class, exchanging a few smiles that lingered too long, or messages that seemed too personal. Yet deep down, I knew it was more than that. Late at night, I would find myself replaying our interactions, the way she said my name, the warmth in her voice, the softness in her laughter. And every time I closed my eyes, I could still see her standing by the classroom door, her hair catching the sunlight as she waited for her son. It wasn't just attraction. It was connection, raw, unexpected, and terrifying. But love doesn't always come when it's convenient. Sometimes it shows up where it shouldn't, testing your morals, your strength, your sense of who you are. And this love felt impossible. I was her son's teacher, someone entrusted to guide, not to feel. Yet as much as I tried to fight it, I could feel myself falling. And with every passing day, the distance between us grew thinner until there was nothing left but the truth neither of us wanted to face. Before I tell you what happened the day she crossed the line, and what I did in return, hit that subscribe button. Because this story will challenge what you think you know about love, boundaries, and the choices we make when the heart refuses to obey. The cafe she chose was tucked away behind a row of old brick buildings, the kind of place you could easily miss if you weren't looking for it. It was quiet, dimly lit, with a soft hum of jazz playing in the background. The air smelled like roasted coffee beans and rain-soaked earth. As I followed her inside, a strange mix of calm and nervous anticipation washed over me. We sat at a small table near the window, the glow of a single candle flickering between us. Amelia took off her coat, revealing a dark green sweater that made her eyes look deeper, almost mesmerizing. I noticed the faint trace of raindrops still glistening on her hair. She smiled when she caught me staring. "What?" she asked, her tone teasing but gentle. "Nothing," I said quickly, fumbling for the menu. "Just trying to decide what to order." She laughed softly. "You don't seem like someone who comes here often." "I don't," I admitted. "I usually just go home after work." "It's quieter there?" "I like quiet," she said, leaning forward slightly. "But sometimes quiet turns into lonely, doesn't it?" The question hit me unexpectedly. I opened my mouth to reply, but for a moment I couldn't, because she was right. That was exactly what it was. I'd spent so many evenings alone with my books, my lesson plans, my silence, telling myself that solitude was peace. But sitting across from her, I realized it had been emptiness all along. "Yes," I finally said. "Sometimes it does." She nodded slowly, as if she understood. "Me too." The waiter came and took our orders, 2 cappuccinos and a slice of lemon cake to share. When he left, she rested her chin on her hand, studying me with quiet curiosity. "So," she said, "what made you want to be a teacher?" I smiled faintly. "I think I always wanted to help people find meaning in things, in words, in stories, in themselves. Literature has a way of showing people who they really are. That's beautiful," she said softly. "I think that's what you did for Ethan. You helped him see himself." The sincerity in her eyes disarmed me. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. "He's a good kid," I said, my voice lower now. "He just needed someone to believe in him." Her expression softened even more. "And what about you? What about me? Do you have someone who believes in you?" The question lingered in the air like smoke. I felt my throat tighten. "I don't think so," I admitted after a long pause. "At least, not in the way that matters." Amelia didn't speak right away. Instead, she reached across the table, her fingertips brushing against mine, hesitant, searching. The touch was electric and my breath caught. I didn't pull away. I think you deserve that, she said in a voice so soft I almost didn't catch it. Someone who sees you the way you see others. Her words stirred something deep inside me, a mix of longing and fear. I wanted to tell her to stop, to remind her that this was dangerous, that lines existed for a reason. But I didn't, because in that moment I didn't want boundaries. I wanted to feel alive. The waiter returned, placing the cappuccinos and cake between us. We both sat back, pretending the world hadn't shifted in that brief, silent touch. As we ate, the conversation drifted to lighter things: movies, travel, the chaos of parenting and teaching. I learned that Amelia worked in architecture, that she'd lived in Chicago before moving here with Ethan. She told me she'd been married once, but it didn't last. People change, she said simply, without bitterness. Sometimes you wake up and realize the person you loved is a stranger. I nodded. Or that maybe you were the stranger all along. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and the air between us tightened. You felt that too, she said quietly. Maybe, I replied. Maybe more than I'd like to admit. For a long moment, we just sat there, the candle flickering between us, the sound of rain starting up again outside. The rest of the world seemed to fade. The clinking of cups, the low hum of conversation, even the music. There was only her gaze, steady and searching, and the rhythm of my heartbeat echoing in my ears. When the rain turned heavier, we decided to leave. She insisted on driving me home. I hesitated but agreed, too caught in the moment to think clearly. The car ride was quiet, except for the sound of rain on the windshield and the soft murmur of the radio. As she pulled up in front of my building, I turned to thank her, but before I could speak, she said, "I don't usually do this." "Do what?" I asked. "Spend this much time thinking about someone I shouldn't." Her words stole my breath. The world outside blurred in the rain, but inside the car, everything felt painfully clear. "Amelia." I started, but she shook her head. "You don't have to say anything," she said. I just needed to be honest. The silence that followed was unbearable. I could feel my heart pounding, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. I wanted to tell her that I'd been thinking about her too, that she'd been slipping into my thoughts at night, uninvited but not unwelcome. Instead, I whispered, "You're not the only one." Her eyes widened slightly. Then she exhaled a shaky, almost relieved sound. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she leaned across the console, slow, hesitant, and pressed her lips to my cheek. It was the softest, most fleeting touch, but it felt like the world stopped turning. My hands trembled. Before I could react, she pulled back. "Good night," she said quietly, and then she was gone, driving away into the rain, leaving me standing on the sidewalk, soaked in confusion, guilt, and something dangerously close to desire. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the feel of her lips on my skin, the warmth of her voice, the storm that had begun to stir between us. I told myself it was nothing, that it could still be just friendship. But deep down I already knew better, because once a line is crossed, even just by an inch, there's no going back. For the next few days, I tried to act as if nothing had happened. I told myself that the moment in the car was just that, a moment. A brief lapse in judgment caused by rain, late hours, and loneliness. But the lie didn't hold for long. Every time I stood in front of my class, every time I saw Ethan smiling up at me from his desk, I thought of her. His mother, Amelia. The memory of her voice, soft, honest, trembling when she said she shouldn't be thinking about me, lingered in my mind like perfume on skin. I felt it every time my phone buzzed, half expecting a message that never came. 3 days later, one finally did. It was early evening when I saw her name light up my screen. "Amelia, I left something of Ethan's at school today. Do you mind if I stop by to pick it up?" I stared at the message for a full minute before replying. My fingers trembled slightly. Me, of course. I'll wait by the gate. It wasn't really about Ethan's missing notebook. I think we both knew that. When her car pulled up, I could see her silhouette through the windshield, poised, deliberate, but hesitant. She stepped out wearing a beige trench coat and black gloves, her hair pulled into a loose bun. The setting sun painted everything in gold. Hi, she said softly as she approached. "Hi," I answered, my voice quieter than I intended. She smiled nervously. "Sorry to bother you again." "You're not bothering me." She looked at me then, her eyes lingering a little too long, and I felt that same invisible current between us. The kind that hums under your skin, waiting to spark. We walked into the empty school hallway, our footsteps echoing faintly against the tiles. I led her to my classroom, pretending to search for Ethan's notebook on the desk, even though I knew it wasn't there. "He didn't leave anything here," I said finally. She nodded. I figured. Maybe it was just an excuse. I froze. "An excuse?" "To see you," she said quietly. The air shifted. I turned slowly toward her, and for the first time, she wasn't hiding behind politeness or restraint. There was something raw in her expression, something I recognized because I felt it too. "I haven't stopped thinking about the other night," she said. "About what I said. What I did. Neither have I admitted before I could stop myself. She took a step closer. "And does that scare you?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, me too." Her words came out like a confession, and somehow that made them even more dangerous. Outside, the last light of the afternoon was fading through the classroom windows. Dust floated in the air, glowing like gold specks between us. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and uneven. "I don't know what we're doing," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Neither do I," she replied. "But I know how it feels." She reached out slowly, giving me enough time to pull away. I didn't. Her hand brushed my arm, then slid down to my wrist, her fingers tracing the edge of my pulse. The touch was gentle but deliberate. It wasn't just physical, it was acknowledgement, a silent understanding of everything we'd been holding back. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Then why are you?" Her gaze met mine. "Because I can't stop wanting to be." Something in me broke then. Something fragile I'd been clinging to since that night in the car. All the logic, the rules, the fear, they fell away. I reached for her hand, feeling her warmth seep into my skin. "Amelia." I breathed, but my voice trailed off, lost in the space between us. She took another step forward, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of her perfume. Jasmine and rain. Her face was inches from mine, her eyes searching mine for permission. Forgiveness, or maybe both. Before I could think, before reason could interfere, her lips brushed against mine. It was a soft kiss. Hesitant at first, but when I didn't pull away, it deepened. The world outside the classroom seemed to vanish. The ticking clock, the fading light, everything but the sound of our breathing and the rush of my heartbeat. When we finally broke apart, I could barely speak. "We can't," I said, though my voice betrayed me. She looked at me with a mix of longing and regret. "I know." We stood there in silence for what felt like forever. Then, without another word, she turned toward the door. I watched her go, my chest aching. Just before she left, she stopped and looked back at me. "I'm not sorry," she said softly, and then she was gone. That night, I sat by my window long after midnight, watching the streetlights flicker against the rain. My thoughts tangled between right and wrong, between what I wanted and what I should resist. She wasn't just any woman. She was Ethan's mother. Someone who trusted me, someone who lived a life far from mine, structured, controlled, polished. I told myself that it was over, that it had to be. But a week later, she came back. It was Saturday afternoon, and I was at the farmer's market buying flowers. I turned around, and there she was, holding a basket, wearing sunglasses, looking as surprised as I felt. "Hi," she said, almost shyly. "Hi," I replied, my voice barely steady. We stood there awkwardly at first, surrounded by people and sunlight and the smell of oranges. Then she smiled. "I was hoping I'd see you again." My heart raced. "Were you?" "Yes." There was a pause. She looked around, then leaned closer. "Would you come for a drive with me?" I hesitated, but she looked so sincere, so vulnerable, that I nodded. "Okay." We drove along the coast, the sea glinting blue in the distance. Neither of us said much. The silence between us was filled with everything we didn't dare say aloud. Finally, she parked near an overlook. The wind tugged at her hair as she turned to me. "I don't know what this is," she said, "but I don't want to pretend it doesn't exist." Her honesty was disarming. I felt a tear slip down my cheek before I even realized it. "It's not supposed to happen," I said. "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But maybe that's why it feels so real." The wind howled around us, and I felt that same invisible current again, pulling us closer, defying reason, and before either of us could stop it, we kissed again, this time with no hesitation. But as the ocean roared below us, I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something that would change both of our lives forever. After that kiss by the ocean, everything changed, and yet everything stayed the same. We didn't talk about it. We didn't define it. But the silence between us carried more meaning than words ever could. I could feel her even when she wasn't there. Every time my phone buzzed, every time I walked past a cafe or the beach, I wondered if she was thinking about me too. Days passed with cautious normalcy. I went back to teaching, smiling at parents, grading papers, pretending I was fine. But whenever Ethan's name appeared on my class list, I'd feel that same ache in my chest. It wasn't his fault, of course, it was mine. His innocence made my guilt sharper, and yet, every time his mother's car appeared at pickup, my pulse would betray me. It happened again one Friday evening. She arrived late, the sun low and honey-colored against the playground fence. I was the last teacher there. Ethan ran ahead to the car, but she lingered. "Sorry for being late," she said, catching her breath. "No worries," I replied, though I could barely look at her. She hesitated before speaking again. "Can we talk?" Her tone wasn't casual. My heart tightened. I nodded and followed her to the side of the parking lot, where the trees cast long, dancing shadows. "I can't stop thinking about you," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. "And it's messing with me," I swallowed hard. "You think I'm not?" She let out a soft, broken laugh. "We're adults. We should be able to control this. But we can't," I said, meeting her eyes. For a moment the world felt still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I told myself that what happened by the ocean would be the last time. But every night I close my eyes and see you." I wanted to tell her I felt the same, that her voice haunted my dreams, that her scent lingered in my clothes. But instead, I whispered, "Amelia, this could ruin everything." Her eyes glistened in the dim light. "Then tell me to stop." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because the truth was, I didn't want her to stop. Instead, I reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. She froze at the touch, her breath catching. Then slowly she leaned in, pressing her forehead against mine. For a heartbeat, we just stood there, breathing the same air, sharing the same silence. Then the sound of a car door slamming broke the spell. We both flinched. Ethan's small voice called out, "Mom!" She stepped back instantly, her composure returning like armor. I have to go," she said, her voice trembling. I nodded, my heart sinking. "Of course." She turned away quickly, walking to the car without another glance. I watched her drive off, the taillights fading into the darkening road. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face lit by the sunset, heard her voice saying she couldn't stop thinking about me. I knew we were standing at the edge of something dangerous, something we couldn't control if we let it happen again. The next day, I decided to end it. When Monday came, I rehearsed the words in my head all morning. "We can't do this. It's not right. We have to stop seeing each other outside school." But when she arrived that afternoon, fate intervened. The sky was heavy with rain, thunder rumbling in the distance. Parents hurried to their cars, umbrellas snapping in the wind. Amelia stepped out, her coat soaked, her hair clinging to her face. She looked worried. "Ethan hasn't come out yet," she said, scanning the playground. My stomach dropped. "He was in the library for reading group." "I'll check." We ran inside together, our footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The storm outside grew louder, the wind howling through the cracks of the old building. When we reached the library, Ethan wasn't there. The librarian told us he had gone to look for his mom. We exchanged panicked glances. "Maybe he went outside," I said, already running toward the door. Rain pounded against the windows. We searched the school grounds, shouting his name over the roar of the storm. My heart pounded. For the first time, the fear I felt wasn't about us. It was about losing him, losing her. Finally, I spotted a small figure near the edge of the field, by the fence. "Ethan!" I shouted. He turned, soaked and shivering. We rushed to him, Amelia dropping to her knees, wrapping him in her arms. "Oh my God, don't ever do that again," she cried, her voice breaking. He was fine, just scared. The relief hit us like a wave. When the adrenaline faded, we found ourselves standing under the awning, rain still falling hard. Ethan was wrapped in my jacket, sitting safely in the car now. Amelia turned to me. Her face was wet, not just from rain. "I thought I lost him," she said, her voice cracking. "You didn't," I said softly. She stepped closer, trembling. "When I saw you running through the rain, I don't know why, but I thought if she's here, it's going to be okay." I looked at her, my heart aching. "You don't have to thank me." "I'm not thanking you," she said quietly. "I'm telling you the truth." The rain was relentless, soaking us both, but neither of us moved. The world felt blurred, unreal. "I was wrong," she continued, her voice barely steady, "about resisting this, about pretending it's not real. Life's too fragile. I could have lost my son today. I could lose anyone at any time. And the thought of not telling you what I feel—" She trailed off, her breath shaky. "Amelia," I whispered. "Don't." But she stepped forward and took my face in her hands. "I need you to know," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "You're not a mistake. Whatever this is, it's not wrong to feel it." The world seemed to pause. Rain cascaded around us like a curtain, isolating us in a small, trembling moment of truth. And then she kissed me, deeply, desperately, with everything we had both been holding back. It was a kiss that tasted of fear and freedom all at once. When we finally pulled apart, I could barely breathe. "I don't care what happens next," she said, her voice breaking. "But I can't lie to myself anymore." I stared at her, my heart beating wildly. "Then maybe we stop lying," I said softly. Her lips parted as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. "You mean that?" "Yes," she smiled faintly through the rain, her eyes glistening. "Then come with me." "To where?" "Anywhere," she said, "just away from all this for a while." I looked back at the school, the flickering lights, the life I'd built on rules and restraint. And then I looked at her, the woman who'd turned my world upside down. I didn't know where we were going or what would happen next. But as I followed her into the storm, I knew one thing for sure. Some loves aren't meant to be safe. They're meant to be real. The morning after the storm felt unreal. The clouds had broken, and sunlight spilled across the drenched streets like forgiveness. I woke up in Amelia's guest room. Her home was quiet, except for the distant hum of the city waking up again. For a few seconds I forgot everything, the rules, the fear, the secrecy. It was just me, the soft warmth of the sheets, and the echo of her voice from the night before. Then I heard footsteps. The door opened slightly, and there she was, Amelia. Her hair was still damp from her morning shower, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "You're awake," she said in that calm, measured tone that somehow managed to disarm me completely. "Barely," I replied, my voice rough with sleep. She smiled faintly, holding a mug toward me. "Coffee, strong. I figured you might need it." I took it, our fingers brushing for a second too long. That simple contact made my chest tighten. "Thank you," I said, trying to sound casual, though nothing about this felt casual anymore. She sat down at the edge of the bed, hesitant, like she was afraid I'd regret everything that had happened. "You stayed," she said softly. "I didn't think you would. I almost didn't," I admitted. "But when I got home last night, I couldn't stop hearing what you said. That life's too fragile. That pretending isn't living." Her lips parted slightly, her breath catching. "And now?" "Now I'm terrified," I said honestly. "But for the first time, it feels like the right kind of fear." She reached for my hand, her thumb brushing against my palm. "I don't know where this goes," she said. "I don't want to hurt you, or cause chaos. But what I feel, it's not something I can ignore anymore." "Neither can I," I replied. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy with meaning. Every heartbeat felt like a confession. Before we could say more, the sound of small footsteps came from the hallway. Amelia stood quickly. "Ethan's up," she whispered, her expression softening. I nodded, suddenly reminded of the world outside this room, the one we both had to face. Eventually, she left to tend to him, and I sat there for a moment, staring at the light cutting across the floor. The weight of what we'd done pressed against me, but so did the warmth of something I couldn't name, something that felt like truth. A few hours later, I was back at school. The halls buzzed with life again, children laughing, teachers chatting, papers rustling. Everything looked normal. But inside me, everything had changed. I saw Amelia briefly that afternoon when she came to pick up Ethan. She didn't linger this time, didn't speak. Just a glance, a silent acknowledgement that what existed between us hadn't disappeared with the sunrise. Days passed. We exchanged small texts, nothing overtly personal, just enough to remind each other that the thread between us still held. "How's your day?" "Busy, but thinking of you. Be careful." Each message carried more emotion than it should have. But then, one afternoon, I was called into the principal's office. The look on his face told me it wasn't good. "Claire," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "I wanted to ask about something that's come to our attention." My throat went dry. "What's going on?" He hesitated, glancing at a paper on his desk. "Apparently, a parent mentioned seeing you with another student's mother outside school hours, late at night. I'm sure it's nothing, but the school board takes professional boundaries seriously." I froze. "A parent saw us," he nodded. "It could be nothing. But just be careful. People notice things. When I left the office, my hands were shaking. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every word he'd said replayed in my mind like an alarm bell. People notice things. That evening, I met Amelia at the same cafe where we'd first spoken alone months ago. She looked worried before I even said a word. "What happened?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "Someone saw us," I said quietly. "The school knows something. They didn't accuse me of anything, but if this continues, it could cost me my job." Her expression crumbled. "Claire." I knew this was dangerous, I continued. But hearing it out loud, "It's different." She took my hand across the table. "We'll figure this out, will we?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You have your son. I have my students. This isn't just about us anymore." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let go of my hand. "I don't want to lose you, and I don't want to lose everything else," I said softly. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The hum of the cafe around us filled the silence we couldn't bear to break. Finally, she said, "Maybe we need time, just to breathe, to think about what this really means." My heart ached at her words, but I knew she was right. "A time," I repeated. "Maybe that's what we need." She reached out, her fingertips brushing mine. "Promise me one thing," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Don't forget what this felt like, even if we have to walk away." I blinked back tears. I couldn't forget if I tried. We stood outside as the evening light faded, a soft breeze moving between us. For a moment, I thought she might kiss me again, but instead, she stepped closer and pressed her hand to my cheek. "I wish the world were kinder to people like us," she said quietly. "Maybe one day it will be," I replied. Then she smiled through her tears. "Until then, we'll have this, whatever this is." And just like that, she walked away. I watched her go, every step echoing like a goodbye I didn't want to accept. Weeks passed. The ache softened but never disappeared. Sometimes I'd see her car parked outside the school, sunlight glinting on the windshield. She'd wave, I'd wave back, and that would be it. Nothing spoken, everything understood. But one evening, months later, as I was locking up my classroom, I found something tucked inside my desk drawer. A small envelope. My heart raced as I opened it. Inside was a short note, written in her familiar, elegant handwriting. "Maybe the world will never understand us. But I hope one day, when you see the ocean again, you'll remember that night. Not with guilt, but with gratitude, for showing us what it means to feel alive." I smiled through tears. That night I drove to the beach, the same place where everything had begun. The waves whispered against the sand, endless and patient. I stood there for a long time, the wind tangling my hair, and for the first time, I didn't feel torn. I felt free, because some loves, no matter how forbidden, leave us changed forever. They remind us that courage isn't about breaking rules, it's about listening to the heart, even when the world tells you not to. And as I looked out at the horizon, I whispered a quiet thank you to her, to love, to the lesson that would always stay with me.